One of the biggest thing looming over the Cubs right now is Cody Bellinger's contract. Is he going to opt in and return to the Cubs, or is he going to opt out? One former GM thinks that he's going to opt out and he could end up with a team in the Cubs' own division. Wouldn't that be something? We're going to get into that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Let's get this thing going with a big Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Good to see you guys, and Go Cubs. Appreciate all you guys for hanging out. It's Mick Gillispie at Broadcaster Mick on the socials. And don't forget, you can find us on the socials as well. All right, let's talk about Cody Bellinger. And that's a big topic. I feel like we got into Cody Bellinger a lot last year as well. Were the Cubs going to sign him, or was he going to go somewhere else? And he found out the hard way that he and his agent, Scott Boras, didn't have the market for him that they thought they were going to have. So the Cubs gave him a 3-year deal with some opt-outs, player opt-outs, which gives him the sole decision on whether he's leaving or he's staying with the Cubs. And, after last year, he dealt with some injuries and, slightly above average numbers, nothing fantastic, nothing terrible. It was just, slightly above average. For a great player like him. And I still think he was arguably the best player on the team, but he played 130 games of the 162, 18 home runs, 78 knocked in. We've heard that, he had struggled at Wrigley. The numbers kind of back that up. And you wonder if, he feels like, hey, going somewhere else would be a better fit for him just because of the wind and, all the day games that you got to play as a Cub, right? But you look at this, and maybe if he would have put, 162 games in, it would have been, closer to what you would expect from him. You kind of would hope maybe you get 25 to 30 home runs and get 100 RBIs, but that's not what happened. But to me, and I've said this before, you need more than him, or maybe you need something else better than him. And he's the guy that you're paying to be your big time player, your best player, him and Dansby Swanson. And neither of those guys could get the Cubs into the playoffs. And the bar isn't even that high anymore. You got 3 playoff spots for wild card teams, and they still couldn't get in, right? So same exact record, back-to-back years, 83 and 79. And, I'm not putting that all on Bellinger, but, I'm just saying, if I'm the front office right now and I'm trying to save my job, I'm looking at this going, hey, you know what? I'd love to have $27 million and then go into what I'm going to have back from Kyle Hendricks's $16 million. And then if we don't sign Drew Smiley, what we can do with that money. And then, because the Cubs need star players that can step in immediately and be impact players. They have a lineup, and I've said this before, of a lot of guys that are average or above average, but you got to have those superstar players to win it all. You got to have the Chris Bryants and the Javi Baez and the Anthony Rizzo types. You got to have the John Lesters and the Jake Arrietas, right? You just do, or you don't win a World Series. Okay. And it feels like, and I've heard scouts tell me this, and I can't argue that on the scout scale, the Cubs are a bunch of 5s, which are not bad players, but not star players, and that ends up with this right here, 83 and 79 and being out of the playoffs, and you got to get 90 wins to get into the playoffs. Right. So what's the deal here? All right. Jim Bowden saying this right here, MLB Radio, The Athletic. He says Bellinger opts out, goes to the Pirates, or that's an option for him. Right. So that's interesting. $27.5 million. The Pirates, they have that really young and talented pitching staff. They kind of fell apart late, but boy, they put it on the Cubs at times last year, and they could use a first baseman and an outfielder. The problem that the Cubs have is that they already have a lot of outfielders, and they already have a first baseman. Now, if I'm the Cubs and Bellinger opts in, then I got to make some decisions on trading some players. And I've got to either look at the guys I have in the minor leagues that you've pushed all up in AAA, and now you got everybody just kind of, in a corral in AAA with a bunch of outfielders and a bunch of infielders that are right there ready to play in the big leagues with no spots, or you trade them, or you trade the guys that are in the major leagues, But the problem is that you're not going to trade Ian Happ because he has a no trade clause unless he waives that. Would you trade Seiya Suzuki? He's been one of your best players offensively, defensively. I would probably prefer him to be a DH. But and then you got Pete Crow Armstrong, who's the best center fielder defensively in my mind in baseball, and only going to get better. So where do you put Bellinger? Michael Busch was really solid at first base. That's the problem, right? So an opt-out for Bellinger might be a win for the Cubs, but then you'd have to deal with this guy if he was a Pirate. But that's the way that this game works, right? So if he goes to Pittsburgh, you know what? Good for him. And you hope that the Cubs then in turn use that money to go out and get somebody. We talked about some guys last video. Vlad Guerrero Jr. Can you imagine him in a Cubs uniform? The Cubs don't have the marquee player. I thought Bellinger would be the face of the franchise, but as much as people like him, I never really felt like he kind of caught the same vibe that Chris Bryant did. When Chris Bryant was a Cub, I mean, he was just the face of the franchise. Javi Baez, El Mago, Anthony Rizzo. And I know these guys won a World Series, but even before that, like you just kind of knew, okay? Maybe Vlad Guerrero Jr., man, I could see him being somebody that Cubs fans would just absolutely endure. And now, where would he play? First base over Michael Busch, DH, maybe he's your full-time DH. I don't know, but you got to have some power and some meat in the middle of that lineup to drive in runs. And he's a guy that that could be available if, obviously if the Bellinger thing doesn't work out. The other one is that Pete Alonso has been linked to the Cubs. I think the Mets aren't going to let him walk just because they got so close this year, and he's kind of Mr. Met right now. I mean, I could see them signing him long-term because he means so much to the franchise. But you know what? He's been linked to the Cubs in the past. Maybe he's somebody else, but he's a first baseman. And then you're in the same spot you were with Bellinger. I mean, you got a guy who is there's already a player playing that position. And I guess that you could also move Busch into other spots. The Dodgers did that, but he didn't do anything to push himself out of that first base job. As a matter of fact, it kind of felt like this could be one of those years where he really has an uptick and becomes the superstar player he was in the minor leagues in Busch. But the Cubs don't have that star presence. If they lose Bellinger, they've lost their biggest star, and you wonder where the replacement would be. So that's where we are right now. Again, all of this just speculation and rumors. This is the hot stove time, right? You get past that World Series, and it's all about what's going to happen. Then you got like the 5 days, and then after that, season ends, 5 days, and then boom, stuff starts happening. So we'll see. I expect the Cubs to make some splashes. I really do. And I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled for something to happen after the World Series. And obviously, as this, this offseason progresses, because it's do or die time for our Cubs. Hey, guys, tell me what you think. What should we do? Get in there. Love to hear from all of you guys. Like and subscribe. Thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out. Always fun to talk Cubs baseball this time of year. I kind of love the off season. I mean, after the way that the regular season went, when you're out of it by July, it's a lot of fun to kind of just like look at how we're going to construct the next team and then see if that team is going to be the one to get back into playoffs and make a legitimate run. But thanks for hanging out, and go Cubs.